All right. Welcome, everybody. The Sex Explorers are back. How are you doing, Cami?
Good. How are you?
I'm holding up all right. It was a good, it's been end of school. We had
Mm-hmm.
the break,
Mm-hmm.
had a holiday last week, and I'm trying to think if there's anything. It's just been busy getting ready for the sex therapy conference. I'm going to that one this year in San
Yay.
Francisco. It's going to be fun. I'm sad that I'll
Yeah.
miss you there.
I know. We get to go hang out with all our colleagues. I'm jealous. It'll be great.
It's going to be so much fun. And I'm also really excited about some of the topics that are going to be brought up here at the beginning of June. Um, oh, one of the other fun things, have you seen? I got some swag that I've been practicing some birds.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Yes, that's been kind of fun. So those are kind of the newer things on my end. How about your block of the woods?
May was crazy. I'm glad it's over. June's a little calmer, doing some family stuff. And then July, I'll start again. About 4 times a year, I offer that CE course. Sexual health competency for mental health professionals. So if you're a mental health professional and want some education on incorporating sexual health into your practice, I have an ACE credit class coming up in July. So
Nice.
other than that, I'm gonna be more relaxed this summer.
Oh, good. Yeah, I got done with that presentation, the 2 presentations I did in May, and
Yeah, how did the Generations one go?
Generations went well. I would say there was one section where like we didn't have enough room. I was going to have people stand up and start walking the 4-dimensional wheel. We just didn't have room, and so I had to like change. And while I was changing, the instructions weren't as clear. But that's only a blip of like 2 or 3 minutes. But it still turned out phenomenal. It turned out great. So
Good.
I'm glad that it's over as well. That was quite the busy experience. And then I've got the sex therapy conference, packing a bunch of clients that I've been seeing, and then I go to Lake Powell for a week. Like I'm pretty excited.
Good. Yes, June is fun, and
It's gonna be good.
it's gonna be good. This is our second to last, right?
Yeah, because we got this one, then we got the book club next week. Another part of that then is also that we have today is question and answer. So we're going to be doing question and answer today. We've got 4 or 5 questions, but for those of you that are watching live, you are more than welcome to send us a message and put on any question you have sexual health related. We'd love to put it on there. If you want it to be anonymous, just type anonymous. We won't share it up with the screen with your name or anything. But if you don't mind, we're going to just share questions or comments from those that are listening. So,
and we've already got one.
Maybe
this Kyle Jameson. Why does Braxton always look like a G6?
This sounds so flat. Thanks, Kyle.
That's our first comment for the day.
I love that. I love that. Oh, and it's fun. Thanks for watching, man. It's good to hear from you. So let's start off. We'll start with some of these first ones. So the first one that's come in is I've struggled in my marriage and feeling more and more stuck. I want to feel in love with my spouse, but currently I'm at a loss of how to do that. I don't feel like we can do anything different because no matter what we do, they're on their phone. So the partner is on their phone. I've addressed my feelings. If things go back to the way they were, I'm at a total loss. The rest of this question, we have to break them down a little bit, but the rest of the question involved that they do a regular weekly date night. They have a pretty set schedule on managing kids, watching a show together. The person asking the question does schoolwork while the partner's on the phone. And it's just sounding like that they feel that they've fallen out of love with their partner and they're not sure how to get back into that. But this phone thing really plays a difficult role in this relationship, especially in feeling this connection. So there's a lot of components to it, but it sounds like they're carving out time, but it almost sounds like we're now in a rote, stuck space.
Yeah.
Any thoughts immediately coming to you, Cami, about what if this couple walked into your office, where might you start?
Where I would start was to see if we had willingness on both sides. Because partner A can do a lot to get the kind of relationship they want, but they can only go so far if partner B isn't wanting that same kind of relationship or isn't willing to work on that. So, I'd start by assessing is their willingness. And usually with couples, I've got one partner leaning in saying, yes, I want to do the work. And there's usually one partner leaning out saying, I'm not sure I want to do this work. I think I'm going to get clobbered or blamed, or I might hear some things about myself I don't want to hear. The leaning out partner. And so I would probably assess who's leaning in, who's leaning out, and is there any leverage we can get for the leaning out partner to be willing to take some risks. I would start by assessing the willingness, because she's saying, how do I get more of his attention? How can I get him to put his phone down? And you can't unless he also can recognize it as a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen this on both sides where just one partner's decided to get onto a phone. A phone's a pretty quick escape.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way you're talking about leaning in, or the partners are leaning in, leaning out. I think one of the first things that I start with is that part of assessment. The other one is oftentimes the conversations come up, and I'm curious is where it seems to break back into its own pattern. Where does the cycle hit? Meaning, hey, I've asked you umpteen thousand times that I really want to build connection with you, and in that connection, it seems like you frequently go back to your phone. Oftentimes, the person going to the phone is attempting to do this to manage, cope, flee, fight, flight, freeze type of scenario. Not necessarily from the relationship, but maybe from parenting, maybe from the relationship, maybe from stressors. Maybe they're dealing with some deeper depression, anxiety, and the way to move away and cope with it is by doing this. This isn't a personal attack to the person or the partner, but it's a method of coping. And that doesn't mean that it stops there. It means we need to bring on different levels of communication, methods of coping, and depersonalization of what the phone means. But then we can start talking about what we're seeing or how we're engaging. It doesn't create a police, someone that gets to be the police officer over phones, but recognizing like, hey, I noticed you're on your phone. Are you feeling stressed? I'd love to connect with you, and I'm feeling disconnected. How can we start doing that? So if we can start up that cycle of communicating what it is we feel we need and breaking some rote patterns, that often can be a helpful way to address these distressing situations.
Yeah, I hear you saying, look for the secondary gain, which is most of us have unfavorable behaviors because they play a secondary role. So you're saying the phone could be playing the secondary role of he can escape or numb out or, avoid the difficult conversation that she's initiating, or there's a secondary benefit somewhere in there that the phone could be playing for him, whether it's coping with distress or, not wanting to address it. Yeah, I think it's important to always look at behavior that way of, is it a benefit somewhere in the system?
And I would say that it sounds as though this partnership has been trying for some time. They've even carved out time where they've got date nights and they're spending time together. When a couple comes in and they're doing the right things or the things that can be helpful, and then it's just not meeting their goal there and they're feeling out of love, I would love to explore, what does being in love look like? What does that feel like? Because that's a pretty subjective experience. The other thing,
and it may be an unrealistic expectation to think that if we're going to be together with someone for 60 years, that we always feel in love with them. but we want to enough that it's reliable.
Absolutely. And then they said we put the kids down. I don't know if that's one child. I don't know if that's 5. I mean, we don't have a ton of information about it, but that all plays a role in this too. So if we are going and doing the same thing, I would first encourage changing up the routine. If you feel stuck, we need to try something different. Just like if you're trying to get a car unstuck from ice or from mud, you can't try and use mud to get you unstuck. You've got to put a board, a brick, a rock, something underneath to try and gain traction. And so I'll often encourage these partners to say, keep that time, do your date night. Don't go out to dinner. What is something that either of you have wanted to try? I don't know.
Yeah, in my
Let's
practice,
rock climb. Let's work
yes.
together. Let's go and do some service, or let's go and instead of eating dinner and walking around a place, let's do a hike and a picnic. It may involve some more planning. It may involve something that is more difficult. Let's go rent a car. Do something that looks and feels different, that you can start having different conversations or engagements and see if we can pull each other in differently than this is the thing that we do, like nighttime routines. It's a date night routine. We want to break
Yeah.
the routine.
I hear you describing what I call like experiential theory. And in couples work, it's really important that we have new experiences together. And that's what I hear you saying. Like the date night isn't there to just check the box that we did the date night. The purpose of the date night is to have new experiences together that remind us that we like each other. And often the routine is reminding us we don't like each other. So, you've got to get into this. That's what I call new experiences. So I don't care if you had a date night. Did you have a new experience on the date night? I don't care if you had time after you put the kids to bed. Did you try to have a new experience after you put the kids to bed? And this goal, the why behind this list of things that couples therapists give their couples, it's not to check the box. It's to try to create some new energy and some new experiences together. And that often will regenerate these feelings of, oh my gosh, I forgot how cool you are. It will remind us why we fell in love with them in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this adds to that worry of whenever we tell people to carve out time for, say, sex or connection or intimacy that isn't necessarily penetrative sex, that we are like carving that time, but then they're like, well, what are we supposed to do? I don't want to plan it. It's like, no, we need to plan things and engage in them. And we can plan to do things spontaneously or a little bit different, but set it up. And that can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, I think most people forget that their most memorable experiences had a lot of planning in them. Our first date, someone's probably planning it. An engagement, there's probably planned. The wedding, months of planning. And so I want to push against this idea that planning makes it unnatural and that it's no longer special, because most of our most special moments we put a lot of effort into. We prepared for them. A baby doesn't just arrive and you're spontaneously excited. You spent that anticipation and that preparation is part of what adds to the joy. And I don't know why with sex people often see that as a negative thing, but in all of our other moments, it's a part of the process that we enjoy.
I think that if we were to experience all of those things you talked about as a spontaneous, we didn't know, like if someone just kind of showed up and handed you a baby and that was an exciting event, and we watched that in movies.
You think I'm not ready?
Oh, I got chosen to have the baby. Oh my gosh! Like this is so yes. If that was the experience, then I think we'd start finding. But if we saw it on movies and TV shows, and this was what we were inundated with, and I think that that's just what we see with sex. We hear it in music videos, or we hear it in music. We watch it in TV all the time. That is just, we are shown that sex is spontaneous, quick, orgasmic, no lube, no prep, no communication. We just watch it from sexual imagery to mainstream media to the way people talk. It doesn't show what you just talked about, which is that planning and the other things that involve
Anticipation.
Space.
Mm-hmm.
Anticipation. Yeah, absolutely. All right, on to the next question. I'm in my 40s, female, and married almost 20 years. When I was younger, I could orgasm pretty easily. As I've gotten older, it's gotten a little harder, but still doable. However, lately I've noticed my orgasms are less intense. They used to be more full body and ringing in my ears, and now they're nice, but not full body, not intense. Is this how it is from now on? Because I'm 40, or is there something I could do differently? When I start thinking of, is this the way things are? Sometimes that can be the answer. But the other part that I start into is going, what is it that you want to experience? You want to experience the ringing in your ears? Are there ways that you have been able to get to that, even in masturbation or not? She's talking about, I could orgasm pretty easily. I don't know if that's with a partner. I imagine that she's talking about being with a partner. Does the orgasm look and feel different when you're masturbating? Is it across the board? Does it happen every once in a while? I really want to know how often and if it's always that way. Are there things that you
Yeah.
really want to know, Cami?
Yeah. We would look at all the bio, psycho, and social reasons that we know impact orgasm. So the biological reasons that we know impact orgasm intensity is pelvic floor. So have you had some kids? Did you do any pelvic floor physical therapy after that? That might be somewhere to look.
Mm-hmm.
Are you on an SSRI? Those are notorious for either decreasing desire or decreasing how quickly and intensely we experience orgasm. Are you stressed? So that's the bio. I'd look at all the bio. Then I'd look at the psycho. Like, is this a stressful period in your life? And social, how's the relationship? And are you able to use mental arousal in the experience? Most women need the same kind of stimulation in a coupled experience as they do in a solo experience to have an intense orgasm. And so when people are saying, I'd be like, is that when you're alone? Okay, that's the kind of stimulation we've got to replicate in the relationship. But if you're having an intense one alone and not an intense one partnered, then I'd look at, they are probably touching you differently than you touch yourself. And that can create a different response.
Mm-hmm.
So I would look at all those areas, bio, psychosocial, and then try and see what comes up for this person is what's different in their life between then and now.
Absolutely, because it plays a whole game between the ears, in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
The physical sensations can alter and change. I also start looking at pleasure and connection because it does allow for body change. I will talk with a lot of men about this, where there's this looming fear of when do I lose my erections for good?
Mm-hmm.
And that anxiety can bring stressors into the bedroom much quicker anyways, and then hit them really hard when an erection, say, goes away.
Especially if they don't know any workarounds, if they don't have any education about workarounds. Yeah.
If it's all about staying and being erect, then you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing I would say for female-bodied people is that if we find pleasure and connection, if it is with a partner and it's feeling good, we're looking for the pleasure and the connection. Now, if the goal is to be able to reach orgasm and experience it in a certain way, maybe we need to explore, like what you were talking about, what touch if this sensation has changed as you've gotten older, then the sensation in other parts of your body might have gone different too. Start playing with neck, behind the ears, breasts, the lower back, legs, different touch on the vulva, different touch on the clitoris, different sensations of kissing, anticipation. What can we start to switch up that can build anticipation, connection, and pleasure? And ultimately, if say if your body has changed in a way that the orgasm has also changed, then what do we work through when it comes to grief? Of like, wow, I may not have that experience again. Not that I won't, but I may not have that experience as you work through what Cami's been talking about. But those are some of the ways that I start engaging with it, while also trying to change the thought process that once you hit 40 and 50, then sex completely takes a dive and it's all over, because it just changes. It continues to change. It's not over.
Right. Continues to change. And, if all of those things are fairly stable, there's connection, there's pleasure, and they're just wanting to increase their experience, we think about mental stimulation, what can we do with our brain, but also has there been some exploration into some tools or some toys that can increase pleasure that I know as women age can make things faster or easier and intensify orgasm if they're willing to look at some toys or vibrators and incorporate them into their bedroom. And there's not any data supporting things like the O-Shot and these things that I've got friends spending thousands and thousands of dollars on. But we don't have a lot of, there's no data that these work. But we have data about other stuff that will work. And there have been some good reports about topical lubes that may have some CBD or THC, that's a whole different conversation. But self-reports from many of my menopausal clients are reporting that there are some lubes, there are definitely toys that can help when you've gone through the more typical biopsychosocial types of things. But I wouldn't spend money on things like the O-Shot or the vaginal rejuvenation. And there's no research indicating that it increases sexual pleasure and enjoyment.
No, or surgeries, or it makes me sad to see how many of these things are being offered when the research doesn't support it. Because you can walk into a lot of different places and get some of these extra surgeries or other things that promise higher, more intense orgasms or better sex, and there's just not, or even more drive. That one shows up a lot too. And there's no evidence that supports that substantially.
Yeah, they're expensive claims.
Yes.
So I'd look at the claims we have that we know will help.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. All right, on to this next one. My nephew is now coming out as transgender. I'm unsure how to respond. I want to show love, but I feel so torn about how the relationship will change. How do I approach her with my unsure feelings? It's a really good question. There's a lot of feelings that can come about when it comes to any relational change. If we start looking at this as a way of the change that can show up when someone's identity is changing, whether it's in this situation, we're talking transgender, and there is a lot of feelings, emotions, and beliefs that start to play into this. It sounds like this person asking is exploring, wow, what is my relationship going to look like? I had this relationship with my nephew, and I had a future that I had planned with a nephew and this identity of a nephew. And now that's shifting, and I don't know if this is real, if it's not, how this works, what should I question, how do I approach? And there's a lot of internal things that can be going on. My first reaction or support to this person is to go, this can be a very difficult internal experience, and sit with the discomfort. Because oftentimes I see people want to jump to, I can't support that, we're not having a relationship, or I want to get away from this discomfort. When if you sit with the discomfort and you show love to the person and engage with them, or act in a way of that you're there for them, that doesn't necessarily even mean that you have to agree, but you can be there for a person and still show love. That oftentimes does a lot better than, oh, great, you're going to choose that, I will separate myself from you. I don't know, and I haven't seen any research that ever supports withdrawing love and withdrawing connection changes somebody and is very supportive. Usually it creates feeling alone, increases threats of suicide and other things along those lines. What thoughts do you have, Cami?
When I talk to my clients about boundaries, I'll talk about how they're like a two-sided window. The inside, which is my work, and the outside, which is someone else's work, right? Or things I'm wanting from somewhere else. And so I'll talk about, what are your internal boundaries? Like as an aunt, what have you decided role you want to play in someone's life? You know, like I have internal boundaries. I'm not going to yell at someone. I have internal boundaries that I don't swear at people when I'm upset with them. I have these internal boundaries. And with this question that's coming up, is what do you see your role as? And one of my internal boundaries is I don't parent other people's children. And another is I don't correct somebody's belief system if it doesn't line up with mine. And so I would first start by, do you have a strong internal boundary where you do your own work inside, but you don't ask a minor family member to do your work for you? Right. So if you're trying to figure out what is up with genderqueer individuals or the LGBTQ population, that's your job to do on your own, and to figure that out. And too often when someone comes out, they feel the burden of then having to describe all this this framework and way of thinking to the person who's struggling in front of them. And that's so wrong. They came to you for support, and they are supporting you because you're having a hard time with it or you don't understand it. And so I'm very lovingly encouraging us to do our own work so that when someone comes out to us, we don't then burden them with our questions and our feelings. It's like someone throws you a ball, here's some information. Your job's to catch the ball, to talk about the ball. It is not your job to then talk about your feelings about the ball as soon as you catch it. And so that's like that first step is we all need to think about what are our internal boundaries. What do we expect of ourselves as a family member and a community member? And that often will say, hey, I don't want to show up unkind. Great. Hey, I don't want to show up, I don't want someone to have to deal with my ignorance or insecurities. That's my work to do and to figure out. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the first thing I would say to family members, and to just say thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. It doesn't matter if they just got engaged. It doesn't matter if they just got accepted to college. It doesn't matter if they're just figuring out their gender identity. If someone in my extended family shares something with me, the only answer is thank you, first off.
I love that. I really like this because if we move it to other points of a life-changing experience, such as if you have this nephew, niece, show up to you and say, I've decided I'm going to go to college for art. I've decided I'm going to go to college to be a lawyer. And
you're not going to say, oh, you're a terrible artist. Don't go to art school.
Oh, but people will do this, and how painful it is, right? It was like, oh, you can't make money as an artist. That's a crap degree.
That's a poor internal boundary.
Yes, that's a poor internal boundary, because guess what? There's a good chance, either one, if they do break this off and they're like, oh, Uncle Braxton said that art is a horrible degree, I'm going to change this and move. You have now opened yourself up to messing up the relationship in resentments. They were excited. You thwarted that. So, and then if they don't, then they're sitting there like, well, I didn't get the support that I need from Braxton. I'm not going to bring that up, because they're still going to continue. They have put a lot of work and effort. There's been a lot of background things going on. And so responding with thank you, or tell me your thoughts about this, or that you must have put a lot of effort into understanding where you're at with this. Help me understand where you're at. I'd love to hear. Or, wow, I didn't see you going into that. That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. Those engagements where you can then step back, take care of your own work. Something's already happened. They've been accepted, or they're going to college, or even I've seen this when people buy cars. It's like, oh, I've never bought a Dodge,
right.
There's no reason for that. That's a bad decision. It's like, well, I have the car here, and now I feel crappy about my decision, and I don't want to talk to you about this anymore. And it doesn't mean you have to be super excited. You can express thanks and then start doing your own internal work, but telling someone what they should or shouldn't be doing doesn't usually change the decision, and oftentimes makes it harder to build a connection later on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, people don't have great skills at recognizing what kind of conversation is being initiated. In this, it sounds like, oh, an announcement is being initiated. Okay, my job is thank you. No advice was asked of you. No. So we don't give advice unless it's asked. That's overstepping, right?
Yes.
And, maybe we could talk a little bit about what some of this is. Some of our listenership might not understand the verbiage, or it might be a new idea to them. I know for, the older extended members in our family, gender is much harder to understand than orientation. And I significantly just want to really point out the suicide rates for, and self-harm rates and depression rates for genderqueer individuals in our community. And it's not that being genderqueer makes someone suicidal. It's being genderqueer in a non-supportive environment makes people anxious, depressed, self-harm, not want to be here. Yeah. So I just want to clarify where, the most harm comes from our non-acceptance, not from the experience that they're having.
Yeah, that makes sense. when I think at the very end of this, how do I approach her with my unsure feelings? The quote there of saying unsure to her opens me up to thinking the person is wanting to be engaging and respectful, again, by changing the pronouns, even though they're unsure. And I think that's a great place to start. And again, expressing an outpouring of love to the person. And then being very open about some of the things that you're experiencing, like, hey, I don't know how to approach these conversations. And I may say something that may feel hurtful, and I'm nervous I'm going to do that. If I do, please let me know. That can be kind of a setup too. Not as I can say now whatever I want to, but that can also set it up as like I'm open to feedback when things happen. Because what I'm sensing in this, and this is I'm extrapolating out a little bit, which is I'm nervous that I don't know how to approach. And so there's a little bit of if I don't know how, I'm going to step back and just ignore. And that can be problematic. Whereas if we can step into a discomfort or an uncomfortable space, that allows for us to still address this person, address their experience, while also you are working through this uncomfortable, I don't know what words to say, or if I'm going to say it right, or what my belief system is. I'm working on what Cami has said, that being able to have a conversation with them about like, I want to be here to be a support to you.
Yes.
And this is new to me too. And so I'm not going to be doing it perfect, but I want to be there for you. So please let me know if there's something that is this or that. I do encourage that to start a conversation about the conversations. They seem to be a little more easier to address so that you can kind of get the lay of this uncomfortable land, with the ultimate goal being expressed that you are there for that person and you want to be in their life. And that can be a huge start, just to start to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd evaluate the relationship you have now with that individual. Whenever given the chance, always choose the relationship over an idea or always do what you can to choose the relationship when you're an adult in a relationship with a minor, right? Do what you can to save the relationship, even if there's different ideologies at play. And Brene Brown teaches us that our conversations can only hold the degree of vulnerability that there is trust to hold it. And so if this is a niece or nephew that you don't have a lot of trust with, or if you've never had a personal, intimate conversation with this person, now is not the time to think that you have the right to ask them personal things. So look back and be like, what kind of relationship do I have with this family member? And maintain that. Don't assume that because you share blood, you have an all access pass into their private thoughts and feelings, right? If you have been that family member to them, then it's an extension of that because you have the trust to hold it. But if you've never had a vulnerable conversation with this family member, we don't have the trust to hold that degree of vulnerability yet. We have to earn it. Mm-hmm. And so when you're saying, well, how do I have a conversation about this? I'd say, well, what's the relationship like? You don't jump degrees.
Yes.
Is there enough trust there to say this is, I'm learning or not? But we don't want to put the burden on the population that's already experiencing minority stress.
Yeah. I like that, to assess what your relationship is, because oftentimes I think one of the first questions people have is they start focusing on secondary sex characteristics and primary sex characteristics, which
so what are you going to do? Are you going to have a surgery? Are you going to start hormones? If you've never talked to them about the medication they take, now is not the time. You do not have the trust that can hold that degree of vulnerability yet.
Yes. And that's usually a big question, right? That surgery, testosterone, estrogen, all those things are not small conversations to have. And they're usually big with a doctor.
Yeah. And do your research. Minors in our country are not having surgeries. That is not indicated as helpful by WPATH. Okay. So do some education about what is or isn't happening instead of, asking the individual to explain the whole idea about genderqueer and the many philosophies there are about transition and their preferences. Start really small and say, how can I support you? Is probably the best question. And then you do what they say. If they say, please use this name and these pronouns, got it. Say, I've got your other name that's a deep neural pathway for me, but I will apologize when I notice that I get it wrong.
Mm-hmm. And if that changes, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
And that's the first step to building that trust. If you keep that agreement you made with them, now our trust has increased a degree. Yes. You keep keeping the agreements, you keep showing up, the trust will increase. And then maybe you will be someone on the inner circle that can support this individual.
Yeah. And I think of it as the way too, that once someone says like, hey, I've got this, I'm part of this orientation, don't get caught up in thinking that now you get to know, like, again, genital things. It blows my mind that people are like, we don't talk. Oh, you've experienced transgender, or oh, you're having this baby, or oh, there's like, you got married, so now when are you guys going to do this? There is so much of an assessment in society that's like, oh, now I get permission to know what's going on with your genitals, but you've never asked me about my genitals.
We don't have that kind of relationship, right?
We're not talking genitals beforehand. Don't jump to that one.
Yeah. And there's some great education for families. The Family Acceptance Project at San Francisco State, there's all these fantastic resources. Parachute is an education program that's free through Mama Dragons. There's a lot of free education you can get if you're not sure where to go to learn about genderqueer theory and that whole umbrella. There are some inexpensive resources for families, specifically the Family Acceptance Project and the Parachute program can be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I don't see any other questions. Was there anything else you wanted to?
Well, I kind of wanted to show this gender unicorn picture in case anyone is not exactly would like some education here. So this is a tool developed to help understand the difference between gender identity, gender expression, sex assigned at birth, who we're physically attracted to and who we're emotionally attracted to. Okay, this was shared with me by a genderqueer colleague, and the dots on the arrows indicate their experience. And so it's interesting to see people are not black and white, that we fall on all these different continuums that make us unique. And gender identity is who we think of ourselves as. And this is a whole continuum of, if we think male, female, boy, man, or other, non-binary or fluid. Gender expression is how we show up in the world externally, what we wear, if we're more feminine, more masculine. And what I love about this is it has a starting place for 0, but all the way across a continuum. This colleague, showed, my feminine side is in the middle. My masculine side shows up a little bit more. But overall, I feel other. I don't feel like I fit in the binary. Who we think of ourselves. The expression is how we show up. Do we wear typically male clothes? And these are all constructs we've made up about what is a boy color, a girl color, a boy clothes, girl clothes. And then there's, our sex assigned at birth. And I just want to point out, under this genderqueer umbrella is the intersex population, which is at 2% globally. 2% of individuals are born with some mix of traditional male or female characteristics. It is not clear, the genitalia, that, wait, we've got a testicle and an ovary here? Or, okay, we've got a vaginal opening and a very small penis, but no uterus. This is 2% of our population. So when we get into these black or white conversations, it's really frustrating for me. And then the 5% of our population identify as genderqueer, somewhere in the trans community, which is different than being intersex, but that makes up 7% of our population.
It's a lot.
And that 2% of intersex, that's as common as if you know anyone with green eyes or you know anyone with natural red hair, they are 2% of our population. That's as common as intersex conditions are.
Wow.
So if you do know people who are intersex, they just have not told you. That's not something they've shared with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you know someone with green eyes, you know someone who's intersex.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's totally different than what orientation is, which is who we're attracted to. If we're attracted to men, we're attracted to women, we're attracted to both, we're attracted to others. That is a different continuum, a different part of our experience. And then lastly, who we're emotionally attracted to. This is different. Who we're physically attracted to is different than who we're emotionally attracted to. Where does that fall on this spectrum? And I love the gender unicorn as an educational piece, but I really love that my colleague was willing to share their experience with these dots about how differently they experience all of these continuums in their life.
Mm-hmm. This I like this because I'm much more of a visual person, being able to identify and see the rainbow. For those that are listening, not able to watch, essentially you've got the unicorn and each place that this shows up on, as Cami's describing this, but the rainbow being in the thoughts of like how I perceive it myself. And then everything else within it's like, okay, physically attracted, emotionally attracted is inside, sex assigned at birth. That's where we start looking at genitalia. Like, oh, this helps break down, like, I think that's where problematic things come up when we're saying like, oh, here's a gender reveal party. Is it gender's fluid, but really what we're identifying is, was there 2 X's in the chromosome? Was there an X and a Y? Does this person, we want to know if this person has a penis or a vulva.
And those are not the only options. There are XYY individuals. There are X with a fragile Y, where one of the Ys broke off. There are more than 2 chromosomal biological sexes, and there have been through every culture in every age of society.
And with 2% being intersexed, that still becomes a problematic way of expression, right? To even say that we're just having a sex party versus a gender
right. Yeah. So, and that was just imaging of if there was a vulva or no, a penis or no penis, but that's different than our chromosome testing. We just don't test chromosomes of babies.
So much. It's we want to make it easier and less complex, so we create the binary. But there are very few things in this world that completely hit binary, and it is definitely not in sex.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, I think that puts us at the end of our question and answer. And
yes, it does.
Yeah, I love the question and answers. People have such great desires and engagements, and I think that's I don't know. It's one of my favorite segments that we do.
And next week, don't miss us. Next Monday, we'll be talking about the book, You Are Not Broken. We'll be reviewing it.
And a lot of what we talked about today actually falls under that You Are Not Broken book. So I'm really excited to hear your take on it and and what you've been learning within it, as well as what I've been experiencing.
Yes.
All right, everyone. When you have questions, send it to sexexplorerspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to have more of those be flowing in. If you have a topic you'd like for us to talk in our upcoming seasons, when we start up season 3 in September, love to hear thoughts and desires from y'all as the listeners. But until next time, I'm Braxton with Birds and Bees Podcast, and Cami.
I'm Cami Hurst with Sex Therapy 101.
And we are the Sex Explorers. Thanks for exploring with us. We'll see you next week.